So 2024 was supposed to be the year that movies are back, and in some ways it really was. There were a ton of great movies that came out, but also some not so great ones.
She did not just say that.
And honestly, some of the movies that came out in 2024 were entirely too overhyped and didn't really live up to expectations at all. And this list isn't meant to tell you whether or not those are objectively good movies, but rather share what I did and didn't like about these particular films, and more likely tell you why they made my list of least favorite films for 2024. Some of them, as I said before, were overhyped by other people in the film community, but ultimately when I saw the film, I just felt like it didn't really live up to the expectation or to the hype that it had. But anyway, my name is Zach. I watch too much TV. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Now, here is my list of least favorite movies of 2024. So my fifth least favorite movie of 2024 is Time Cut by Netflix. It was a Netflix original film and it starred Madison Bailey from Outer Banks in the lead role of Lucy Field. She played a daughter to two parents who had lost their eldest daughter 18 years before the start of the movie. And Madison's character is sucked into this time-jumping fueled plot to save her older sister that she never knew from the gruesome serial killer attacks that happened 18 years before the film begins. And I typically love a silly time travel focused film, especially in the avenue of something like Happy Death Day. And funny enough, last year Amazon Prime even came out with their own Halloween themed time travel slasher flick titled Totally Killer, starring Kiernan Shipka. And Totally Killer was a very well thought out plot that didn't leave me wanting more. I felt like it wrapped everything up pretty well, and I felt like Time Cut didn't really live up to the rival predecessor from the year before. Time Cut left me waiting for more to happen, and I kind of enjoyed the film for the most part, and I appreciated the atypical ending of the film for this genre, but I just didn't love how slow it felt in the beginning and how kind of depressing and sad it was, as opposed to just jumping into the slasherness. There's also a lot of overly meta stuff trying to happen in this movie compared to other movies in this genre, and there were some choices made in the script that didn't really hit, and maybe that's because I was expecting something different out of it, but in general, I felt like there could have been a little bit less meta-ness and a little bit more tightening of the plot and themes throughout the movie. But if you want more recommendations of other time travel-focused slasher movies, I would recommend Detention from 2011, starring Josh Hutcherson and Mae Whitman, or Happy Death Day, like I mentioned before, or even Totally Killer. My fourth least favorite movie of 2024 is actually a tie between two films. It is a tie between If by Paramount and Moana 2 from Disney. So these two films are tied. I think the reason I didn't love either of these movies is a combination of how unfinished they felt. With If, they didn't spend a lot of time developing these imaginary friends in the movie, and for a movie about imaginary friends, you would expect them to at least develop the main cast, especially when projects like Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends exist, and it's kind of renowned by people of my age group. And I remember leaving the theater feeling a little like the idea was half-baked. There was a lot left to be desired from this movie, especially anyone older than maybe 13 years old. And while anyone above 13 isn't really the age demographic, the movie still should have not left the audience wanting more out of the story. And so with Moana 2, we kind of know what went down with this movie. So this movie was originally supposed to be an 8 to 10 episode Disney Plus series that would have aired sometime between the fall of 2024 and summer 2025 is what I would assume. Disney executives realized that they didn't have a Thanksgiving Day release for 2024. And they realized that Mufasa the Lion King probably couldn't hold its own against something like Wicked Part 1. So in typical Disney fashion, they wanted to make sure they had something by pivoting Moana, the TV show, into Moana 2, the movie, knowing it would come off as a highly anticipated sequel and it would be cheap to pivot it into a movie, and the story would be fine enough to bring in big crowds, especially since they got a lot of the original cast members back for the project. But the plot was seriously lacking, and there was a big issue with character development. The movie jumps around a lot. It's very easy to tell that the film was a bunch of scenes from a TV show that ended up being condensed into an hour and 45-minute film, and it felt akin to a direct-to-home video Disney princess sequel that we got from the 90s into the early 2000s, almost 2010s, like Cinderella 3, A Twist in Time, or Aladdin 2, The Return of Jafar. And both movies alone, they're decent, but they're not heavy enough hitters to have had full theatrical release, which is funny because Moana 2 was supposed to be a streaming show. So my third least favorite movie of the year is Joker Folie à Deux, or Doe, however you say that. Overall, this movie was just flat out terrible. And before anybody gets up in arms in my comment section and freaks out over what I am about to say, just listen. There is nothing you're going to be able to say to convince me that this was a good movie. Nothing. Even Lady Gaga could not have saved this movie. And I'm sure I missed some symbolism or meaning or theme, but it just wasn't entertaining and it wasn't really on theme with the previous movie. And film is meant to be entertaining, and so if you can't even do that basic thing and keep people engaged in the movie, how do you expect them to get anything out of it? The musical aspect, to me, felt like an afterthought because they were able to secure Lady Gaga as a major character, which she, in the end, didn't even seem to play Harley Quinn, and Joaquin Phoenix just kind of stumbled through this performance because he had no actual script to work with. Whatever script he was given was quite terrible. I just don't understand how this movie got made, and I don't really understand how people were excited for it, and I really don't understand why people wanted to see this in theaters. Nothing of substance happens in this movie, and quite frankly, I fell asleep a few times, and I still felt like I got the gist that nothing happens. So moving on to my second least favorite movie of the year. This film was really disappointing for me. I really wanted to like it, and I was really sad to have to include it on this list. But that movie is Queer by Luca Guadagnino, starring Drew Starkey and Daniel Craig. I'd actually say I was really desperate to like this movie, and my friends and I were all really excited to see it because it's gay. But in the end, this was just a bad movie. I know that there's a lot of mixed reviews, and this is probably another case where I missed something that everybody else seemed to understand. But my friends and I left the theater and we looked at each other and I literally asked them, what did we just watch? This wasn't good, right? And they all agreed with me. We even went for coffee immediately after the movie to debrief a little, and none of us could come up with what the point of the movie is. None of us could really understand what we just watched. I just felt like the chapters didn't really work well together. They kind of told three different stories using the same characters, and some of the characterization was all over the place, and it had a lot of big jumps that made me really question how we got where we did. The transition from chapter 2 to chapter 3 felt really odd as well, because a lot of the imagery and design in chapter 2 felt similar to Poor Things almost. And then all of a sudden we jump into this Jurassic Park looking set, and it really threw me off and took me out of the film. And I understand the film is about addiction and manipulation and the dangers you go through for both. But a lot of the stuff about this movie took me out of the experience. And it made me sit there thinking the whole time about what I am experiencing as opposed to actually experiencing it and then thinking about it afterwards. So it just didn't hit how I wanted it to. And maybe that's because I had way too high of an expectation. But overall, I was really disappointed by it. And so my least favorite movie of the year is Dune Part 2. I'm absolutely kidding. Dune is actually probably one of the best movies of the year. My actual least favorite movie of the year is Longlegs. And this one might be a little biased because I know a lot of people like Nicolas Cage and think that he's like one of the all-time greats in cinema, but I don't get it. I don't understand the Nicolas Cage hype. There's not one single Nicolas Cage project that I've walked away from and thought, wow, Nicolas Cage was really great in this role. Everything I've seen him in is either something that I think is fine or something that I think is genuinely bad. This movie was so hyped up to be this like genre-bending, horror-defining film that pushed the boundaries of what a horror movie could and should be, and quite frankly, to me, it didn't do any of that. It just kind of was a standard horror film or psychological thriller following police detectives / FBI agents about missing persons and murders. And maybe one of you in the comments can kindly explain to me what I missed or what you liked about the movie, because I didn't like the movie and I guess I missed something. But people loved to talk about the twists in this movie and Nicolas Cage's performance as Longlegs. And I'm just going to say it here. This movie was entirely predictable to me. There wasn't a single twist that I didn't see coming in this movie. And I won't comment too much about Nicolas Cage's performance because I've already established that I am a little biased against him. But his performance was fine. The movie was bad. I wouldn't say this movie is groundbreaking or boundary pushing. And do I hate this movie? No. Will I ever watch this movie again? Probably not. But do I think it got way more attention than it deserved? Absolutely. And that's why this is my least favorite movies of 2024 list. But anyway, what was your least favorite movie of 2024 and did it make my list? Let me know in the comments and don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel.